Moving on. The first day of US-mediated peace talks between Ukraine and Russia have concluded in Abu Dhabi. Earlier efforts have repeatedly failed to achieve a lasting ceasefire. Ukraine said the first day of peace talks with Russia has shown signs of progress. Officials from Kyiv and Moscow met in Abu Dhabi for rare, direct negotiations, marking only the second such engagement between the two sides in more than 3 years. Ukraine's chief negotiator, who heads the National Security and Defence Council, described the discussions as substantive and productive. However, no major breakthrough towards ending the near 4-year war has been announced so far. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the talks must deliver real results that people can feel. In his address, he stressed that the negotiations should move the country closer to peace and not give Russia an opportunity to drag the war. Zelensky also turned the situation inside Ukraine, saying the focus is on critical domestic issues, especially energy security.
Today was a long day with many internal issues. Energy sector matters were discussed, both the restoration situation and the protection of energy facilities. The situation in Kyiv is difficult and, in some aspects, more difficult than in other cities. In fact, resources from across the country are being directed to support the capital. The Ukrainian government will expand all support programs for people, and about 100,000 heating aid packages will be distributed. There are also urgent tasks regarding Kharkiv. The Ministry of Energy must speed up the necessary supplies.
The Ukrainian president also said he expects a prisoner of war exchange with Russia in the near future.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is only afraid of US President Donald Trump. That's a fact. What Trump should say to Putin is not for me to say. If President Trump knows that Putin is afraid of him, then he cannot accept all the conditions set by the Russian president. It is Putin who is afraid of Trump. It is not the other way around. President Trump knows he has leverage through the economy, through sanctions and through military force.
And in the same interview, Zelensky claimed that about 55,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed since the start of the war, though analysts suggest this number could be substantially higher. The Kremlin, for its part, said the door to a peaceful settlement remains open. Moscow also made clear it will continue military operations until Ukraine accepts its conditions. In fact, in its daily briefing on Wednesday, Russia's defense ministry claimed its forces had advanced deeper into Ukrainian defensive positions. The ministry also said Russian troops struck targets in more than 150 areas. And at the center of the dispute is territory, where Russian forces are pushing for control over the Donbass region. Russia is demanding that Ukraine withdraws its troops from large areas of the Donbass, including strategic and heavily fortified cities rich in natural resources. Moscow also wants international recognition of sovereignty over territory it has seized during the war. Currently, Russia occupies around 20% of Ukraine's territory, including Crimea and parts of the Donbass taken before and after the 2022 invasion. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said diplomacy will take time, but claimed progress has been made in reducing the number of unresolved issues. He added that the most difficult questions still remain, even as the war continues to claim lives on both sides.
If you look at the checklist of open items that existed at this time last year and the checklist of open items that remain now in terms of reaching a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia, that list has been substantially diminished. That's the good news. The bad news is that the items that remain are the most difficult ones.
Well, back in Ukraine, more than 60 foreign diplomats visited a severely damaged thermal power plant in Kyiv on Wednesday, as Ukraine stepped up efforts to show the scale of destruction caused by recent Russian strikes.
Germany is now already the biggest supporter in the energy sector. We are delivering mobile units to give emergency assistance to people who are suffering in their apartments. We have just delivered the first few units, combined heat and power plants. There's more to follow very soon. We'll deliver also mobile boiler houses. This will provide some relief in this very difficult situation. But of course, the situation remains very difficult. We have minus 22 degrees at night here. This is really hard for normal people in Ukraine.
And the European Union has also reached an agreement on a major financial support package for Ukraine, worth $98 billion in loans. In a statement released on Wednesday, the European Commission said representatives of EU member states held a closed-doors meeting in Brussels, where they discussed and finalised the framework of the loan plan previously proposed by the Commission. As the fighting on the ground continues, all eyes are on Abu Dhabi, where negotiations are set to return for a second day of peace talks.
The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this new year, Firstpost America gets a new look. I'm Kerry Johnston, and this is Firstpost America.